Hello, everyone. Welcome to TALRadio, and this is me, RJ Saankhya, hosting to the interview today. In a world that often tests our compassion, TALRadio is here to showcase the unwavering spirit of humanity. So, picture this: a little child battling the adversity far beyond their years with a foe named cancer. Imagine how daunting and isolating that would be. But this isolation goes away when a guiding light shines in the heart of Santa Barbara, California. I'm talking about this wonderful organization called Teddy Bear Cancer Foundation. As a nonprofit organization, they are not just about providing aid, but they are about creating a haven of love, compassion, and solace for these young warriors and their families who are fighting with cancer. So now let me take a moment to commend the tireless dedication of Dr. Corey Pahanish, the executive director of this remarkable foundation, who is also going to be our guest today to guide us through this foundation. His steadfast dedication and profound empathy have transformed the lives of countless children and families facing the challenges of cancer. With a heart full of kindness and spirit of resilience, Dr. Panish has become a beacon of hope and a true advocate for those in need. So, without a further ado, let's dive into the interview and know more about the foundation. But first, let me welcome Dr. Corey onto the show. Hi, Corey. How are you doing?
Good morning. Good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for coming here. So, tell us something about yourself and what inspired you to join Teddy Bear Cancer Foundation.
Sure. Well, I am the product of a widowed mother home and grew up just south of Detroit in Michigan and faced a lot of obstacles and adversity myself, especially considering the kind of impoverished life that we were navigating. As a result of that, that had an impact not only in the home, but even in school, in my public education. And at some point, I eventually graduated high school, and I was ranked 361st out of 367 graduating students, bottom of my class with a 1.4 GPA. So college wasn't on my radar. And no one was really hiring in the community that I lived in. And so I moved to California with an ex-girlfriend and a credit card, maxed out both the credit card and the relationship. And the silver lining to this story is I started volunteering in the nonprofit sector. And the population I was volunteering with are individuals with developmental disabilities. I have affinity for that population, and I was placed in special ed resource classes. And eventually I met my first mentor, Mark Gardner, who said, "Hey, Corey, you can actually get paid for this stuff." And that was my entry level position in the nonprofit sector over 20 years ago. And he encouraged me to become a first gen college grad, which I did. And then from there, that opened up some doors to not only get my paralegal master's, but also my doctorate in institutional leadership from the University of San Diego. And this was in 2017. And I was also working my way up in the nonprofit sector to eventually become the executive director of an amazing nonprofit in San Diego, serving a very diverse community called Bayside Community Center. And so around the pandemic, I wanted to see what I could do. I inherited an existential crisis in this community center I was a leader of, and it was stable. We did some remarkable things there. We manifested a lot of miracles with the community that we served. And my PhD was under my belt. And so I started looking around to see how I could couple those two in a meaningful way. And one of those doors that opened was Teddy Bear. And while cancer wasn't necessarily in my advocacy crosshairs, I found out my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer quite literally during the interview process. My phone was vibrating in my pocket when I was interviewing with Teddy Bear's board of directors. And while that is tragic, I am a man of faith. And so for those two things to happen simultaneously, not only did I take that as a sign, I was open to further discernment. And shortly after Teddy Bear told me I was their guy, I found out my mother passed of cancer. And so with that being, in my humble opinion, more than just a profound coincidence, I sort of took it as a cosmic sign to really entertain this. And obviously I did. And this was October of 2020 that I started here. And I'm very grateful I did.
Wonderful, Corey. So, can you provide insights into the various programs and services that Teddy Bear Cancer Foundation offers to children and their families?
Sure. Our mission is simple. The execution is complicated. It's to advocate for families that are battling pediatric cancer on the Central Coast. And the interventions, or the pillars, if you will, are through education in the form of tutoring, as well as financial support, anywhere between $7,500 for qualifying low to moderate income families up to $17,000. We also offer transportation and lodging to families of all socioeconomic backgrounds, and emotional support, of which we just expanded from our group counseling model to in a partnership with Family Service Agency to both couples and individual counseling through a trauma-informed lens.
Wonderful. So I want to know, how does the foundation tailor its support to meet the unique needs of each children and their parents?
That's an excellent question. This is a question that is being addressed quite literally on a daily basis. Our families are our center of gravity. Everything revolves around them. So while we serve a little over 200 individuals each year, we serve the whole family. So you're talking about thousands of people on the Central Coast. And as I mentioned earlier, the mission might be simply stated, but the execution is complicated, especially when you start looking at the demographics, meaning that of the families that we're serving, 70% identify as Hispanic Latino. We have an abundance of Spanish-speaking families. Furthermore, when you look at the ways that children in low to moderate income families have a inferior sort of survival outcome in their pediatric cancer journey, it really does become our primary focus to make sure that financially the families are stable. And the average cost of the pediatric cancer journey is $833,000. So we have our work cut out for us. A lot of times, though we are working toward moving our families from surviving to thriving, oftentimes our immediate interventions are triage. And I can provide the empirical data with respect to the survival outcome of children battling pediatric cancer through a social determinant of health lens and all the complications that come with that. But sort of an anecdotal way of looking at this is we have a widowed mother who immigrated here from Mexico for treatment for her child to save her child's life. When they came to us, they were homeless. So you're talking about a widowed mother of 3 whose primary language is not English and is homeless. She was skipping chemotherapy treatments because they didn't have money for gas or lodging. Furthermore, when you're getting your food from a dumpster and providing that because you're operating from a survival instinct, that also has an impact as well. Children who are battling pediatric cancer require to have nutritious food to strengthen their immune system, give them a stronger chance of successfully fighting pediatric cancer. So when that case comes to us, we are, with our partner agencies, finding a home. The home that we found didn't even have a refrigerator or stove. So we were able to provide the refrigerator and a stove and all of the infrastructure from mattresses to a couch to TV, and as well as to give them money for the deposit and rent, as well as money for food. And then that's where we're able to leverage our transportation and lodging program, where we're able to pay for that, to subsidize those expenses in partnership with American Cancer Society. So it quite literally is, we provide a life and death intervention that complements the medical interventions from our hospital partners.
Wonderful. So can you share some success stories of children who have overcome cancer and have gone to achieve their dreams? Any of your favorite success stories?
Oh gosh, what a beautiful question. This might be one of the more intimidating questions because It's really going to be hard for me to collect my thoughts right now. I really do make it a priority to spend as much time with our families as possible. I suppose of the families that immediately flash in my mind, we highlighted last year during our 20th year gala a family who successfully battled pediatric cancer. But even the sibling, and this is actually very common, went on to to graduate from a nursing program and is set to work in a pediatric oncology unit. There's also one of my dear friends and colleagues. Her name is Becca, and she was diagnosed with a cancer that to save her life, she had to have a mid-leg amputation. And she was not only one of the first recipients of Teddy Bear Cancer Foundation services, she went on to become today our senior program director, 18 years with Teddy Bear, and has grown this program from, I think our budget, our first year was like a little over $1,000 to this year's budget is just over $1.7 million. And so she is certainly a hero in a lot of our eyes.
That's so lovely. So, in what ways does Teddy Bear Cancer Foundation collaborate with medical community?
In a lot of ways. I don't even know if there's enough space on the internet to post all of the partnerships that we have that help us to accomplish our work. I mean, I mentioned earlier about our hospital partners. That is a hand-in-glove relationship where we have not only pediatric oncology doctors and nurses and social workers that are reaching out to us, providing us with very critical information for us to take a tailored approach in supporting our shared families, but also with local nonprofits. We're not doing this alone. So I mentioned earlier with a partnership that helped that homeless family to have a home. The organization's name is Starfish Connections, and the trauma-informed therapeutic interventions that we provide is in partnership with Family Service Agency. And, we even outsource our tutoring program. We work with American Cancer Society, but we also too have a department that's called Business Partnership Program. And what this entails is you don't have to necessarily be a nonprofit that is mission aligned with us to support our families. We work with private businesses all up and down the Central Coast, especially during Pediatric Cancer Awareness Month, where in these tailored partnership with these small businesses, portions of whatever proceed it is that they're selling benefit our organization. And I mean, it truly is countless partners. And then too, we partner with our families. I can't think of a more experienced, seasoned expert than a mother who's been through this, or a father who's been through this, or a grandparent that's been through this journey. Because there is no, here's how you successfully navigate pediatric cancer handbook. There are so many different nuances that impact families in different ways. However, many of those nuances, when we partner our alumni family, people we've provided service to in the past, with families that are currently going through it in a very sensitive way, that's invaluable. Especially too, you mentioned earlier in your introduction about compassion. That is a very, very deep empathic bond. And there's a type of listening that happens in exchange there that just can't be replicated by someone who's there as a professional, regardless of how seasoned they are.
Great. So what challenges have you encountered and how have you overcome them while dealing with this whole foundation?
There's so many layers to that question. It's really hard for me to compartmentalize my thoughts, but I think it would be valuable for me to sort of put myself out there personally to answer that question, because what we're talking about doing as a career is constantly exposing ourselves to vicarious trauma. The applications that I read daily, it's tragic. It never gets easier. You don't become hardened to this work if you're doing it right. So personally, it is self-care. I have not only a individual therapist that I see weekly, a men's group that's facilitated by a depth psychologist, spiritual, academic, professional mentors and coaches that I work with. And in this type of work, there's a disproportionate burnout compared to many other career ventures. And how much of a value are we going to be to families if you've got that constant revolving door of attrition? So that brings me to my second point, which is I inherited an organization in which we were losing a staff member every 3 months for 6.5 years. And not only does that have a deeply and profoundly distressing relationship with our families who just built trust with the last person, who are you and why am I having to tell this trauma-informed story over and over and over again, meaning it really does dilute the impact of our mission with our families. But even from a business perspective, I've read in research anywhere from between $18,000 and $33,000 is what it costs as a symptom of attrition per employee. Those are the hidden costs that add up. So I'm in my third year now, and we've lost 2 and 3 years. They're both, they didn't leave disgruntled and burnt out. They went on to different paths, and they're still very actively involved. But that has been a sort of a Rubik's Cube that we've been trying to figure out since I've started. So that's why, as an institution right now, as an organization, we are going through this institution-wide, from our staff to our board of directors, cultural reset, where we are pursuing becoming a trauma-informed, resilient healing institution in which many of the ingredients from psychological safety to your initial intro of compassion and benevolence are baked into the recipe of who we are as an organization. It's good business. And on the other end of it, it ripples out to impact our families. So I'd say like that in terms of sustaining our current growth and our successes is paramount. It is the highest priority of our institution.
Great, Gauri. So is there any criteria that the kids have to meet so that they get your services, or is it open for everyone? How does it work?
Yeah, so it depends on the program. So, for example, as I mentioned earlier, while we offer financial assistance to all families, regardless of their socioeconomic status, with our lodging and transportation grant, our direct financial assistance, which is we cut the families a check, and there's a tier system of between $7,500 and $17,000. You have to meet Housing Urban Development, HUD, low to socioeconomic status guidelines in order to qualify for that particular intervention. Furthermore, there are tutoring that we not only offer to the child that's in treatment, but we've expanded that to include the siblings as well. And that really is more of just an application process if families are interested. And then the final piece of this is, even with respect to our group counseling model, again, that's something that's open up to all families, regardless of socioeconomic status. But we do not turn children away as long as they are on the Central Coast, what we call the Tri-County area: Ventura, San Luis Obispo, and Santa Barbara.
Thank you for answering that. So this question is going to be a bit personal for you. So how has your personal journey intertwined with the mission of the Teddy Bear Cancer Foundation?
Why, geez, you're asking some pretty, I'm really enjoying these questions. They're really causing me to pause and reflect. But I'll tell you, I mean, personally speaking, especially as a child going into adolescence, I've faced some pretty not just challenges, but I've lived a pretty, unfortunately, traumatic life, and that's been essentially almost half of my life has been immersed in trauma. And I suppose if we look at it through one lens of, well, that just sounds sad. Of course. There is another side to that coin, and that is that there is an abundance of genuine, authentic compassion and empathy that fuels me in a way that this is not a job, this is not a career. This quite literally, as I mentioned earlier, being a man of faith, and I don't even know that I could even define that, to be quite honest with you, being led by something that's bigger than myself. This is a calling. That is how I make decisions. And so, in other words, with all of the academic training that I have, there has to be a strong level of faith that some of the decisions that might be unconventional or even uncomfortable, difficult and complicated, on the other end of it, if it's from a place from your heart and you're aligning it with your brain and you're open to being a pluralistic thinker, quite literally, this has been the recipe for how much success I've had in my career, both in San Diego and now in Santa Barbara with Teddy Bear. So that's from a spiritual perspective. And then two, I am not only proud that I'm a first gen doctor. I mean, it's applicable. I mean, I'm a researcher. And so being able to not just do comprehensive research into the empirical data that exists within the pediatric cancer realm, but then translating that into how we provide interventions has been something that's been of extraordinary value, not only to our organization, but even as how we're educating the community. In my ability to have this interview with you and to articulate this, it comes from having that academic background. And by the way, too, I am humbled by that question because, as I mentioned earlier, I have character traits that have been required and essential to overcome many obstacles and challenges: grit, resilience, determination. And these are more than just humble brags. They've been required to overcome a lot of things. But also, too, I've been very blessed to have mentors. I don't have a traditional blood family, but I do have a number of kinships that I'm very blessed and grateful for that have entered my path and that are rooting for me and providing wisdom and experience and resources. And that includes my newest teddy bear family. I have an incredible team. They are remarkable angels that I'm working alongside. So as cliche as it sounds, unfortunately, it is very true when I say it has taken a village. And so I'm just very grateful to have that village and be immersed in it.
I'm sorry if the question involved a lot of emotions, but I really enjoyed you answering that. And I'm also sorry about your childhood, but it's so inspiring looking at how you made it through it, right? So
Yes.
Thank you so much for answering that. And yeah, before we go, could you explain the different ways individuals and businesses can contribute to the Teddy Bear Cancer Foundation's mission through donations?
Oh, thank you for asking that. Yeah, it's a really important question. We operate with precision. This is my pitch to the philanthropic community. Every dollar, every cent is with purpose. We take this work extraordinarily seriously. We don't just operate with our hearts. We operate with a significant amount of brain power. So, and obviously I'm very biased. I'm a part of this institution, but nevertheless, I feel compelled and inspired to share that as an intro to any donors or philanthropists that may be interested in supporting us, of which they could do by going to teddybearcancerfoundation.org. We do have a donation tab there that they can support. I'm always open to having conversations with anyone that wants to donate a penny to however much, whatever your capacity is. Also, too, attending our events. We've got an event coming up in Montecito, California at a beautiful estate on October 7th. You can find out more information on our website. But also, too, obviously money is extraordinarily important, but also too, just investing your sweat equity. And there's many volunteer opportunities as well. And then getting out the message, getting out the word. If you see us on social media, Facebook and Instagram, we pay close attention to that and try to celebrate our families. Don't just share with your community as well.
All right. So that's a wrap. So thank you so much, Dr. Corey, for your tireless efforts for children with cancer and their families. And it's really inspiring looking at your stories and, the work that you're doing. You're really inspiring. And
wow,
thanks for being on the show and sharing your insights.
That means a lot. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you so much. And also, I really wish our listeners are listening to this right now. And I really wish they try to do some contribution to the wellness of the foundation. So I really wish that from my heart. And yeah, thank you once again. And There you have it, listeners. A truly inspiring and insightful conversation with Dr. Corey Pahanish, the Executive Director of Teddy Bear Cancer Foundation. I hope you found this interview insightful. And for more such interviews, stay tuned to Tal Radio. And this is me, RJ Saankhya, signing off for today. Take care, you all.